All right, welcome back to the Atlanta Child Murders Revisited. It is 31 October. Happy Halloween, everyone. Get out there and get your treats. Be safe, of course. And we are back with ATKID video number 13. Hopefully, I'm going to finish up here with my location videos that are very, very, very important. All right, so we left off with Ed Garland. I wanted to say a few more things. So, let's talk about logistics, how things work, okay? And I'm going to get into this here. So, in 1979, 80, and 81, does Ed Garland or anyone in his office know Wayne Williams? I'd say highly probable. I think that Wayne Williams has probably come by here for some kind of legal consultation, or maybe Garland has referred him to one of his other little sycophant clients like Axum or Watley or Fryer, or maybe even Mary Welcome. But whether Williams has met face to face with Ed Garland, I don't know. Does Ed Garland know about Wayne Williams? I would think so. Okay. Does Ed Garland know that Wayne Williams is committing the Atlanta child murders? I'd say probably 95% no. He doesn't know that. Why would he want to know that? Okay? Because here's one thing. If you're as being part of the Georgia bar and you know of something illegal that is going on, especially related to murder, and you withhold that information and don't notify the police, you could, if that's found out, like you told somebody you knew about it before, you could be held accountable. If not legally, at least you could lose your law license. So I don't think he wants to know. Okay. That would be, and here's the thing with lawyers, lawyers are only going to want to know the minimum, okay, that's going to get your case done. That's all they're going to want to know. That anything extra, they don't want to know about, because that leaves them open to liability, okay, and blackmail also. So how it works with logistics, I think with Thieves, I think what's going on is I don't think Garland is going down on a weekly visit to the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. I think he's sending an associate, a junior partner, a paralegal. They may have an envelope. They may have a briefcase, whatever. Probably a junior partner, because when you have a junior partner, then you can get a room where there's nobody listening and no phones, okay? Because it's client, lawyer client a privilege there. So he's either putting stuff in an envelope, putting stuff in a briefcase, giving it to a junior partner. They're going down and they're giving it to Thieves. And then Thieves is writing out there, because he wouldn't want to do it before because he might get his cell searched. He's writing out what he wants. Here, turn around for a second. I'm going to write this stuff down. He's putting it in the envelope, okay, sealing it, putting in the briefcase. The junior partner has no idea what's in there. They're instructions to Garland, okay? And it may be as simple as give this to Jimmy Jen, okay? It could be just as simple as that. And that's how the logistics, the communication, I believe, works. I've seen this in many other, and read about this in many other things, books, and stuff like that. That's how I think it's working. That's how Garland can legally be a courier for Thieves' empire and not be involved in suffering any kind of consequences for it. Okay? Again, it's all about layering. You send out a junior partner. The junior partner is only taking instructions in an envelope that you have sent. It's going to be minimum. Okay? And then Thieves is going to write down the instructions, put it back in the envelope, and send it to the junior partner sealed. That's how the logistics is working, okay? And it's going to be that way because the lawyer, especially like Garland with a good reputation, is going to want to keep his, what's priority is always to cover your own ass, okay? You're not going to make a kamikaze dive for your client. That's just not the way you're going to do business. Because if you do for one client, you're not going to be in business very long. Let me see if I'm still recording here. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm still going. So again, it's not anonymity and layers of separation. And he's got other clients. He's not just Thievis's lawyer, okay? He's a Gambino mob lawyer, of which Thievis is probably 50, 60, probably 50% of his time. He's got other partners inside his law firm that are handling other cases, but primarily they're handling the mob's cases, okay? The Gambinos. They're running defense, keeping them within the law and out of jail. That's why they're making the big bucks. That's why they have the office, in the hidden office in Buckhead. And you notice, let's just say one thing about location. Location tells you everything, okay? You notice that Garland doesn't have a office in a big high rise in Buckhead in one of the prominent, expensive buildings. Now, of course, he's been here since the 70s before a lot of those buildings were built, but he can always move, right? Upgrade. But he stays here. It affords protection. It's off Peachtree. It's in Buckhead. It's in the center of where his clientele are going to be, the rich people, but it's off the main drag. He's not on the main drag. He's not out there, you know, doing ads. Hey, come down to Garland's. I can get you out of jail. You think the police are bad? Oh, here, try this. And, we got a 2-for-1 special. Get you out of jail. He's not that kind of flash in the pan kind of lawyer. He's very, and what that tells you, he doesn't need clients. He doesn't need people coming to his office and saying, "Oh, police have arrested me for murder, and I got to get out," or the police are somebody's coming after me on this. He doesn't need clients. Okay, he has his client, which are mob figures and drug dealers. They all know about him. It's word of mouth. Okay, hey, if you ever get in trouble, just call Garland at this number. And then he's right down the street from the police also. So that's why he's located here. That's why he's got his little shade trees here. He's not in some big flashy office over here in Buckhead. Now, we'll go down the street a little bit, and we're going to come across a woman I've mentioned before by the name of Patricia McLean. Okay? Now, sometimes she goes by Brenda McLean. Sometimes she goes by Patricia. It's like another last name. I can't remember what it is, but I got it on her file. But about 2 doors down is Patricia McLean Interiors. Okay? And if my stupid Google Maps will clear up. But while it's doing that, I'll talk about Patricia. So Patricia, let's all remember now, before she became a Buckhead, rich Buckhead interior socialite, she was a dance instructor down off of Marietta downtown. And back in the early 70s, he was like 20 something. And Thievis went and took dance instructions from her and fell in love with her. And she became his number one squeeze, his number one girlfriend. Okay, there was his wife, who'd been with like 20 something years and he was on the way out with. And then there was Patricia McLean, there was his other girlfriends, and there was my mom. My mom left. He made the other girlfriends and secretaries all, each one, there were secretaries They worked in an ice cream shop. They were dance instructors. And now he gave each one, before he went to jail, he made CEOs of his fake corporations. Okay. And he took all his assets and, he put those in different girlfriends, you know, names. And Patricia McLean, he took all of his music, or a lot of his music, and most of his clubs, and put in Patricia McLean's name. Okay. And the rest, the music, the studios, he put in Jimmy Jen's name. Now that's got to tell you a lot about Jimmy Jen, okay? Because if he's only trusting his wife, he's only trusting his close girlfriends to put his stuff in, that means he trusts Jimmy Jen, okay? So, and he's had some kind of bad luck with these other guys like Jap Hanna, Jimmy Mays, Roger Underhill. So he's taken a big risk by putting these assets in Jimmy Jen's name. But Jimmy Jen's not stupid. He's seen what happened. He saw Thieves shot Jap Hanna. He saw Thieves blew up Jimmy Mays. He saw Thieves break out of jail and gun down Roger Underhill. So he's no fool. He knows that even from jail, Thieves can get him. Okay. So he's going to manage his music portfolio, his GRC, which becomes Gen Music, and he's not going to you're not going to screw the pooch. Okay. But there's his girlfriend. So his girlfriend, she's into the music business all the way up to the 1990s. She's sort of doing what Nova Entertainment was doing. She was trying to find new talent, get them on her record labels and stuff like that with Jimmy Jen. Eventually, she gets out of that in the 1990s and she becomes this, you know, rich, elite, Buckhead interiors socialite. You know, these women that their husbands are CEOs of major corporations in Atlanta, and these bored housewives, and they've raised the kids and they got nothing to do, so they want to have these social parties. So they want to decorate their mansions in Buckhead. Okay, they call Brenda McLean. Maybe she has a few clients, 10, 20 clients, but she keeps them happy. Okay, that's what she does. Little do they know, all they have to do is Google, but little do they know that she was the girlfriend of notorious pornographer Michael Thieves. And you see here, she's affording because she's two doors down from Michael Thieves' lawyer right there. And you'll see it when Michael Thieves breaks out of prison, they arrest Patricia McLean. I got video showing her coming out of the Fulton County courthouse, and they posted bail. And you see Ed Garland just going after the judge and going after the police and proclaiming the innocence of his client. Okay. And then, they asked Patricia McLean what she had to say about, Roger Underhill getting gunned down and Thieves breaking out of jail, Roger Underhill getting gunned down. The first thing she says, the most important thing on her mind was to get home and feed her dog because she's been in jail for 5 days and no one's fed her dog. So screw you, Roger Underhill. Okay. You're lying in the mud with your face blown off, and now you're 6 feet under and your bones are getting cold and stiff. But screw you, Roger Underhill. I got to get home for the most important thing, which is to feed my little dogs. Okay? Anyway. But that's Patricia McLean. Again, she could be located anywhere, right off of Peachtree. Okay? But she's over here because she doesn't need to advertise. She's got her made clients. Okay? Probably some of these clients are the wives of rich drug dealers and rich mobsters. Okay? So she's taking care of that end. So she didn't have to advertise. That's why she's on a kind of a very lonely, quiet street here. Now, again, the question is, in 1979 to 1981, did Patricia McLean know about the Atlanta child murders? Okay. Well, I think she was a little busy because the trial of Thieves just ended right before the murders started. Actually, no, the trial ended during the murders. Okay, Thieves was convicted on the same day that Yusuf Bell disappeared. Okay, jury came back. Thieves was convicted, sent to prison, and then later that day, Yusuf Bell disappears. That's like October of 1979. And so Patricia McLean, I'm sure, had bigger things on her plate to worry about. Okay, they got Thieves. Are they going to come after me now again? Because Patricia McLean, her Thieves' father, um, Thieves wired his father $100,000. Thieves' father went and got that money out of his bank account, gave it to Patricia McLean. She used that money to hire her cousin, this policeman, okay, um, to use his police computer to track down the tag of Roger Underhill so they could follow his car. She used her real estate connections to find some property owned by Roger Underhill. Roger Underhill was going into the witness protection program, okay, and this is like 1978. But before he did, he wanted to sell this property and get some money to give it to his wife, okay, and take care of his kids. Patricia McLean also used that money and her charm to get a friend of hers to take a shotgun and build a silencer for the shotgun, and which is totally illegal. And then she gave the gun to Thieves. And in October of 1978, Thieves, they waited in ambush for Roger Underhill to bring by Galante to show him the property to sell it to him. And Thieves shot his shotgun, winged Roger Underhill and Galante, and then went over and said, "Hey, you fucked up. Now you know who it is that's going to kill you. That's me." And he shot Roger Underhill in the face and killed him. And then, of course, he had to kill Galante because you can't have any witnesses. Dead men don't talk. But Roger Underhill had already given his testimony linking Thieves to the murder of Jap Hanna, linking Thieves to the arsons of various porn properties, linking Thieves to the explosion of Jimmy Mays. So when he went to trial, they tried to use that testimony. They tried to force Patricia McLean to talk. She talked a little bit, and then charges were dropped against her because she testified. But here she is, 40 something, 5 years later, trying to pretend like she's all innocent and this sweet little interior decorator. And like I said, people in my other videos, that when you see older people, when I was growing up, you're supposed to respect older people because they had everything right and they did everything virtuous, and they got to where they were because of their brains and their hard work and all this bullshit. It's all a lie. Okay. That's what I have discovered over the years. It's all a fucking lie. They got to where they were because they were fucking ruthless. They clawed their way to the top. They, stabbed the other guy in the back. They did things that they weren't proud of. All these people, when they were younger, they're ruthless. That's how they became number one. When you see a guy who's the richest man in the world, he didn't get there by being nice. He didn't get there by following all the rules, okay? Just look at Trump. Trump didn't get to where he was by following all the rules. He broke the rules, bent the rules, paid off people, paid off officials, intimidated people, threatened people, had people killed. That's how you become number one in America, folks. Don't let anyone lie to you and tell you that it's not. Now, for you and me, we would get caught if we acted like that. And they'll keep us little people in line. But the rich elite people, they're ruthless. It's all about their power and their money. Brenda McLean is part of this. these rich elites. You know, every city has its rich elites. They're usually fucking Republicans now, okay? And they're ruthless. They'll do any and everything to keep us fighting amongst each other, keep the police beating on us, and keep us little poor folks in line. And if any of us steps out of line or pops our head up, we're hit over the head like the whack-a-mole. One thing, all rich people, they may fight amongst each other in that TV show, what, Rich Wives of Atlanta or New Jersey or whatever the hell that show is. But when anybody threatens their power in the group, they're band together and they fight like hell. Okay? That's just the way it is, folks. It's the way it's always been. From the days of the kings to the days now. The rich have always been at war with the poor. And in the Atlanta child murders, this is exactly what we see. The victims, they were the poor. Who was Wayne Williams? He was the poor. Was he being used, manipulated, and directed? Probably. Doesn't excuse him from what he did. But the children that were murdered were being used by the elite in hotel rooms, in videos, in naked pictures. They're just a commodity, folks. They're just a product. Some flesh for sale that could be discarded. Here, Wayne, take care of this one. Here, Wayne, get rid of that one. He's talking too much, making us nervous. That's what I think was going on. And here in Buckhead, you have the rich elite. This is Brendan McLean, part of that group. Ed Garland, who services that group. Most of these people you'll never see or know about. They're hiding in mansions and hiding in tall office buildings over here. Okay? When you have a building that's shaped like a pyramid like this, it's because the power is at the top, folks. We're at the bottom. This is where the elite are. That's why the elite, this is why Eugene Smith had his office on the 22nd top floor. Okay? We're at the bottom, the poor, to be used and to be discarded. Now, along with that, those poor was my mom. Okay? And again, I didn't know 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't know who the hell Ed Garland was. I didn't know who the hell Patricia McLean was. But once I start doing research and digging, it's crazy what I find. Just absolutely insane. Okay, now when this clears up, I'll talk about this some more. But again, my mom, like I said, started off down by the airport there. Like I started off my first video. That's why I did the first video and we worked our way north, folks. There's a reason to the madness. So she started off at Spirit Rent-A-Car. Spirit Rent-A-Car got bought up by Jelco. Okay. Spirit Rent-A-Car had an office at the airport or Virginia Avenue, an office downtown, and I think they had another office maybe out near Charlie Brown Airport. And they had their main office, which was right here in Buckhead, okay, off of Peachtree Street. Now, about 1981, end of 80, beginning of 81. So my mom, her primary location was the Hilton down by the airport, okay? But when she became pretty senior and knew her business, knew what she was doing, so they started moving her around. When people would call in sick, she would work the location downtown. Somebody would call in sick, and she would work the location in Buckhead. Now, the location in Buckhead she's working, okay, was right here. This, where these three buildings are, used to be an empty parking lot with two trailers. Okay, there was a trailer here. There was a trailer here. This trailer over here was the rental. They had all these cars, rental cars. This trailer rented out those rental cars to people, rich elite people staying at the hotels. In the headquarters was right here for the Atlanta area, so this is where the payroll was. HR, the boss of the boss was right here for the Atlanta. Now I believe Jelco was out of I want to say Minneapolis or something like that. I don't know, but this was their main headquarters right here. Okay. Now, when I'm researching and I find Garland, I find Shadowlawn, and I find Patricia McLean, literally a block away from where my mom was working. Okay. My mom was working here, ended up working here. I know she was here beginning of 81 all the way to the end of 83. And then she went to some kind of beautician school and started working on nails or something. And she worked in a nail salon for a couple of years. I don't know why she would want to do that, but that's what I think. She was tired of standing. But in 80, the end of 80, in 81, my mom worked here. Um, about after the summer of 81, my brother failed out of college, came back, started working there with her. Um, it's kind of weird because he started off here working with my mom, washing cars. He was the maintenance man for the cars. People would return the cars. He would clean them up, wash the cars, check the oil, all kinds of stuff like that, and get them ready to be rented out again. And so my brother would walk through and he would turn in the keys and turn in the cars. And over here in the main office was this really pretty blonde girl. Okay. And about what, I don't know, February, March 1982, I come home. My mom throws some shoes down and a tie and a dress shirt and says, "Get this on. Your brother's getting married." I'm like, "What?" So I guess he had met this girl and they were dating. And she was like, I don't know, he's like, so I was 15. So he would have been 20. And this girl was like 18, maybe 19 at the most. And so he was going to go in the Navy. And then when he started dating this girl, he decided not to go in the Navy. And and then one day she came to him and said, "Well, my parents are moving to Connecticut next month. I'm going with them unless somebody stops me and marries me." Okay. And so I guess he asked her to marry him. That's how she proposed to him, I guess. And God, they've been married ever since. So they've been married, what, 45 years, 44 years, something like that, 43 years. Craziness. But they found out there. And then eventually my brother started working with my dad's company at the courier service down there. And then he fucked up. I think he was fucking up his logs or something. I don't know what he was doing. But he had the route from the airport up through, Stewart Lakewood, East Point College Park to downtown, all the way up to the um, Federal Reserve Bank. And he would deliver the checks there, and then he would hit the banks on the way back to College Park, East Point, stuff like that. But eventually he gets fired, and then he goes and works with my biological dad at some food processing company, and he's been doing that ever since. Um, but before my brother, in 1980, 81, my brother's off at college, I would come up here on weekends with my mom. So my mom would say, "Hey, you want to go to Linux?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." You want to make some money? And I said, "But I don't have any money." Because, "Well, you can make some money. I just want you to wash some of the cars." So people would come up, they drop the cars off on Friday. And it was usually a lot of these guys were FBI agents, undercover agents. Okay. Even the Atlanta police was using our rental cars. Okay. And so they would drop up because, the Atlanta police was just right down the street here. So they would use the cars for undercover operations. They would follow people around, use a different car every couple of days, and they would drop the cars off on Fridays. And then on Saturday mornings, my mom sometimes when she wasn't working at, sometimes she would work at the Omni, and then my dad would pick us up, and then we would go up there just for a couple hours. She would check in, do some paperwork. While she's doing the paperwork, I'm washing all the cars, okay? And then say I worked like 4 hours. The pay was like what, $3.50 an hour, and so she would pay me cash out of petty cash. She would write it down as she had paid, a employee, which was me, and I'd make $12, $15, whatever. What didn't seem like very much. And then um, when I finished with the cars, I would take off. I'd go across the street, get on the bus, and go up to Lenox Square right here. And then my mom and my dad would come later when she was finished with her paperwork, okay? But I just find it fascinating, completely fascinating, that right across the street, literally blocks away, okay? And I don't know if Patricia McLean knew my mom was working there. I don't know if Garland knew my mom was working there. I don't know if my mom knew Garland or knew Patricia McLean. I'm pretty sure my mom knew Patricia McLean at least by sight, because she had to have known and found out that that was Stevens' girlfriend, right? Michael Stevens? Michael Stevens' girlfriend? What? That little hussy? Maybe there's some jealousy there. But did my mom in 1980, 80 to 1983, did she know that Patricia McLean was right down the street? Did Patricia McLean have her interior decorating right there in 1980 to 83? I don't know. Did she know that Garland office was right there? Well, Garland's been there since the 70s, so I think probably. Was she, did she find out about the job through Garland? I don't know. It's just a fucking small world, okay? So, was my mom still in touch with Davis while he was in prison in 1980 to whenever he got sent to Minneapolis? I don't know. I'll tell you this much. I love my parents, and I would never say anything bad about them. But I'll tell you, I know they had a secret life that I wasn't privy to. There were a lot of whispers. A lot of times we were told not to talk about things. People would come by the house, and my mom would send me out of the house. Go outside and play. Go to your friends. And there would be cars like FBI undercover cars, okay? Or there would be like fucking Cadillacs of rich people. But I know my parents had a secret life that I wasn't privy to. I was 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. I didn't deserve to be in their world, right? Maybe also it was a little bit of protection. Maybe they were protecting me from the shit that they knew about and were, you know, either hiding from or trying to run away from or avoid or whatever the fuck was going on. As far as I know, now I think my parents were involved in the Atlanta child murders? No, I don't think they were involved in the Atlanta child murders. I do think it's strange my dad's reaction when I told him that the guy that I saw at the Dippers dance was Wayne Williams. He literally went off the fucking rails, and actually his reaction was sort of between anger and absolute panic. So there was something going on there that I don't know about. I'll probably never know about. Maybe he knew something or thought he knew something. I don't know. Did my dad or my mom know Wayne Williams? Probably not. Probably not. But you never know. So, did they know about Wayne Williams and his involvement with the child murders before Wayne Williams got caught? Probably not. But I think once everything started spilling out, they started connecting the dots. And then when the police and these other rich people started coming, that kind of filled them in on other things. My parents, my mom was a very, my mom would have been, if she had married Thieves or some other rich guy, she would have been probably Patricia McLean, and her would have been best fucking friends. They would have been eating in the social restaurants and everything like that. My mom loved the Buckhead socialite life. She constantly uh, was trying to insinuate herself into that lifestyle. But being that she wasn't rich and she wasn't from the right side of the tracks, she was always on the exterior. Okay. So God knows what she would have done to have access to those types of people. I remember we talked, we met the governor, we met the mayors, senators, they wouldn't come by the house, but we would meet them at social events. I already talked about Vince Dooley and all these other fucking people. And again, I didn't give a rat's ass about any of these fucking people. Okay. Matter of fact, I actively avoided all these types of people. If they had, you know, the first rule I always learned, never trust people in suits. If they're wearing a fucking suit, with a tie and a coat in fucking July, there's something wrong with them. Okay. So that was the number one rule. And you got to understand, it's not like hot like in Arizona hot in Georgia. It's like hot in a fucking shower fucking hot in Georgia in July and August. So if you're wearing a fucking suit, you're swimming in that fucking shirt, that dress shirt. I don't care if you got air conditioning in your fucking car or whatever. As soon as you step out, you're sweating like a pig. Okay. When I lived in Houston, it was worse, even more humidity. And I always laughed because I took a bath in the morning, but by the time I got in my car and drove to work, I was sweating all over the place. So I never wore, I wore like khaki pants, but I wore like, a collared shirt, like a polo shirt. But there was definitely something going on with my mom and these social elites that she was always trying to get close to. Okay. And I don't know what it was, but there was something there. They would take off. I thought it was great because I was basically the only guy that was like 13, 14, 15, 16 years old whose parents were rarely home. Okay. So once my mom started, you know, she was working all the time, but once she started doing her nail stuff at her nail salon, she would take off. My dad had transitioned from supervising this courier group to now he was doing sales. So he, about 1983, 84, 85, he would go on business trips to New York, Chicago, and he would get clients for the courier service. The checks, so he'd go talk to bankers, okay? And my mom would go with him. That's why she stopped working at this place. I think she just got tired of standing and all that kind of stuff, and so she kind of retired from that and did her little nail stuff whenever she needed money. Okay, but there was definitely something going on that I wasn't privy to. So they would go for a week or and be gone, and I'd have the whole house to myself. You know, matter of fact, there's this story. A bunch of us in like what was it, '83? Anyway, I'll just tell the story real quick. So everybody knew that my parents were always gone, so they were constantly asking me, "Hey, can we go over to your house this weekend, Friday, and we can all watch movies and we'll pay for the pizza." So, I wanted to be cool, so I would do that. But after a while, they started trashing the fucking place and shitting on the fucking toilets, and I just stopped doing that. But still, everybody knew that my parents were gone all the time. So we all went out one time. What we would do, on a Saturday night, a bunch of kids would get together, got on South Lake Mall, and they had the midnight movie, and they'd show Rocky Horror. So I went down there, and there was this girl that I had dated a little bit. She went, and a couple other people, and then this other girl I was kind of interested in, and for a while. And we all had this big station wagon. So I go drop everybody off. And I thought this other girl that I knew, whose name begins with an N, was going to stay at this other friend of hers name begins with an S. And so after I dropped everybody off, I'm the last place supposed to drop her off is at this friend's house. And she goes, "Oh, we can't go there." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, because they're already asleep, and her parents don't know I'm going to be. Her parents don't think I'm staying there." And I said, "Well, I'll just take you home then." She goes, "Oh, well, no, I told my parents I was staying at S's house." And I'm thinking, "Oh shit, I'm getting set up. This girl is making it where I got to take her to my place, and then she's gonna make the moves or something. I don't know." And I kind of did. I liked this girl a while, and then I didn't like this girl, and so we ended up going back to my place. Um, she slept upstairs, my sister's bed, and I slept downstairs. And then about 7 in the morning, she comes down and wakes me up, and I'm like, "Well, what's going on?" She goes, "I guess I could. We need to go, so my parents don't think that I was out all night, or I can go to my parents." And I said, "Okay." So then I took her home, and I was literally going to drop her off at the Crystals before I took her to my house. Well, nothing happened, okay, but she went home, and then the next week in school, all the kids are saying, "Oh, you and in had sex." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" No, we didn't. Of course, I'm a guy, and I don't want to deny them having sex, but definitely didn't want to have sex with this girl because she was kind of weird, okay? She was like this other girl, the wrestler girl I was telling you about, wearing black all the time. She had like silver fucking fingernail paint and stuff like that. Anyway, so she got upset. She thought I didn't like her, I hated her, and I was calling her stuff, and it way got out of hand. And then about a year later, for some reason, I needed a tutor to pass the class, and she was the only one that could tutor me. So I went to her house, and we were tutoring, and then one thing led to another. You know how things are, and we got together. We didn't have sex, but, we were messing around. And then she brought up the incident about what happened the year before, and I said, "Well, you know, I didn't say anything." And she goes, "Well, I didn't say anything." And then how girls are, they got upset. And then that was it. That's all I saw of her, and she didn't see me again after that. But the girl was really smart. I feel sorry about what happened. I didn't do anything, but it's just one of those things. I don't know how I got in this story, but anyway, all my friends, knew I was there by myself. My parents would take off, and I don't know where they were going. They said they were going to Chicago. I don't know what they were doing in Chicago. They could have been up there killing people, as far as I know. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know. You don't know what your parents are doing when you're a kid. They do whatever they want to do. They go wherever they want to go, and you're not privileged or privy to that. And they'll never tell you. And they lie. They put on this fake face, that they're so high and mighty, and then you find out, they're hanging with criminals and all kinds of bullshit. Anyway, so back to this area. So I would go up to Lenox Square, and usually I'd ride the bus up here, and usually I would come back to this. They had this new section that opened like the summer of '81, back in the back here. And oh, just want to say one thing. Linux was always one level, so I was really shocked when I went back in 2002, and they had added like another, at least one level, maybe two more levels above. So I always thought that was interesting. So Linux, they I always hung out in this section here, some interior of Linux, and I would go to this place called the Sword of the Phoenix. Okay, and it was on the second or third floor. On the bottom floor was a food court. They had a So on the bottom floor was the food court. They had a game room like over here, They had a movie theater like right in here, and then they had up above they had like a California pizza kitchen. They had a gyro place, and I just thought it was the coolest fucking place around. I just loved going there. Okay, and sometimes when I would go up there and work, I would call my friends and say, "Hey, I'm gonna be washing cars at my mom's from like 8 till noon, and then I'll be over at Linux about noon." Okay, so I'm 15. They're all 15, 14. Um, so sometimes their parents would be going that way and they would drop them off. Most of the time, it couldn't happen. Or sometimes my friends, not a lot, but very, very rarely, my friends would come with me. And either they would sit there and watch me wash the cars and say, "Hey, you missed a spot," or they'd help me wash the cars and we'd split the money. But it was a good time. So we'd go up there, and I was a Dungeons and Dragons nerd, so we'd go to the Sword of the Phoenix, and they had a couple other games that I would buy. I love these um, World War III games. There were games about potential scenarios for World War III. So we would go there all the time, and then we'd see a lot of movies there. Across from Lenox Square, God, I don't know why my fucking internet is so goddamn slow. It's just really slow. Across from there was Phillips Plaza. That place had been there for quite a while. Um, I think we saw The Empire Strikes Back right there. Yeah, but God, I don't know what the hell's going on with my internet. But anyway, so we'll go back down here. So about 1980, I was like hiking. Okay, it was like on a Sunday down where I lived at, and I saw something interesting in the bushes, shining. I didn't know what it was, so I stuck my hand into these bushes, but there were some bees there, and they all swarmed all over me and stung me. Okay, for some reason my internet has stopped. All right, hold on one second. Let me see if I can get this going. I may have to stop here. It may not be recording. Yeah, so hold on. All right, so it's back. And I got stung by all these bees. Now on Monday, I went to school and I started having problems. Right. Is it my left hand? No, it was my left hand. Maybe it's my right. I think it was my right hand because I had problems writing. And my hand really blew up and stiffened up, and I had an allergic reaction to the fucking um, bee stings. Okay, so my mom, they sent me to the nurse. My mom came and got me. We went to a medical clinic. They injected me with all this fucking adrenaline and antibiotics and stuff like that. And hold on, yeah. And so I had to go to work with my mom. So I'm staying there with my mom, and this medicine was really making me feel kind of weird. And so there was a Wendy's, like right down this way, down here, I think right there. And so I walked all the way down here, and I remember walking past this building right here, and that was the Cheetah Three. That was the Cheetah Three strip club owned by the Gambinos. It was all kind of they had lights on it. They didn't turn the lights on during the day, but at night this place was lit up. Now they made it into a Trader Joe's, and I just noticed. Look at there's like a big fucking like a church, right? So they got this church right across from the fucking Cheetah Three strip club owned by the mob. Isn't that crazy? Um, but yeah, there's some kind of church. See the steeple? Wow, I bet they weren't too happy with the fucking Cheetah Three Club being there. And then we'll get in. I think I got enough time to go over this. Yeah, 10 minutes. Okay. So right here, behind where my mom works, there was, oh, wow. Okay. Right here, there was a Kroger grocery store. And right in this building, right there, let's see, there was a dance place, a disco called the Limelight. Now they used to call it the Disco Kroger. It opened, I want to say like 1980, right in the heart, right in the middle of the Atlanta child murders. And again, like I was saying earlier, this was owned by this French Canadian guy named, you see it's right here? It was right there. That was the Disco Kroger, the Limelight. And it was owned by this French Canadian guy named Gayton. Okay. Gayton had mob connections. It was a front. The Limelight, the one he had in Florida, the one he had in New York were all mob fronts for selling drugs. Okay. Now, whether they opened it for the purpose of selling drugs and prostitution or the mob came along and absconded them and made them sell drugs and have prostitution, I don't know. But this place was pretty notorious. I'm certain that Wayne would have come here because in 1985, I had gotten a job in Tower Place at an insurance company in the mailroom. And in the mailroom, there was this gay guy, and he had about 3 or 4 friends that were gay that worked there. And, me being new and, I didn't know shit. They said, "Hey, you want to go to the Limelight Dance Club with us on Friday night?" And I'm like, okay, sure, why not? And see, back then, the drinking age, um, well, in 1984, it was 18. In 1985, it was 19. In 1986, it was 20. And then 1987, it finally stopped at 21. I think it should have stayed at 18 because all the kids are drinking nowadays at 18 anyway. Now you're just making them criminals, which is stupid, I think. If you can vote, if you can carry a gun, if you can kill people, okay, if you can drive a fucking tank and shoot 100 or 70 millimeter, whatever the hell it is, 120 millimeter shell and blow up a fucking building, you should be allowed to drink, which is so stupid that they don't allow that. But I don't drink. I don't advocate drinking, but I just think it's stupid that they made it at 21. Anyway, so we would go over there and I open my eyes to how the world really was. And again, this has to do with that very, very aggressive homosexual community that exists, that environment that exists in Atlanta that enabled the Atlanta child murders to continue and go on. I go in there, you know, there's fucking gay guys everywhere. It's a straight club, but they're gay guys grabbing each other, grabbing each other's asses. They're trying to grab my ass. I got 40-year-old guys coming over. Hey, you want to dance? Hey, you're kind of cute. You want to dance? What you doing here? After about 30 minutes, I left. I got tired of fucking 40, 50-year-old fucking men grabbing my ass. Okay. And hey, you want to go out to my car? You want to go? I got some blow, all this kind of bullshit. What a bunch of crap, And my coworkers are kind of making fun of me. Oh, yeah, well, that's just the way it is, And they were all gay. They're all dancing together, dancing with the other gay guys. And that's when I realized that all these guys were fucking gay. Okay. So, but you would go through the parking lot here, and the police started patrolling this parking lot because these gay guys, or or even straight guys and women, would be inside the strip club. They would come out to the cars and be snorting cocaine, shooting heroin, having sex, having orgies, right there on the hood, inside the car, everywhere. It was notorious. Okay, it was like Sodom and Gomorrah, they used to call it. But right there, we have time to get into this. 5 minutes. Okay. So right there is when I had this job in 1985. Okay. Now in 1981, right after the Atlanta child murders, I think right after, um, I think July 1981, right after Wayne Williams got arrested, they had a movie come out called Escape from New York. And I